My name is Eddie Randall. My sobriety date is November 3rd, 2018.
Picture the stadium that the Broncos play in, filled to the brim. And now put 13 more of them side by side, and that's how many people in the United States have a drug or alcohol problem. And all of a sudden it was like, oh, that's a really big problem. And it's like, yeah, it's a really big problem.
Addiction is a problem that impacts millions of Americans every day. According to the National Center for Drug Use Statistics, 165 million Americans 12 years and older currently abuse substances. By currently, we mean within the last 30 days. Substances include everything from alcohol to tobacco to illegal drugs.
Welcome to Taking Control, Stories of Recovery. Battling addiction can seem like a lonely process. I know that from my own experience as a recovering alcoholic. But over the next half hour, I want people facing that struggle and those who have someone in their life who is struggling to know they are not alone. I'll introduce you to several Coloradans who've shared their story who now want to help others. And I'll also be sharing my personal experience. Before we begin, at any time during this half hour, you can text the word recovery to 303-871-1491. We'll send you a list of resources for you or anyone you know who's struggling with addiction. When taking the first steps into the recovery process, people need to know they can feel completely comfortable. Many recovery programs suggest that work be gender specific, meaning those who identify as a man work with men, and those who identify as a woman work with women. Denver Women's Recovery takes that approach. The founder, Holly Wilson, has now dedicated her life to helping others.
5 years ago, it was still a dream.
When I started to think, okay, when I do my place, I'm going to have it be focusing on the gender for women.
A vision that grew in the mind of Holly Wilson, founder and CEO of Denver Women's Recovery.
A focus specifically on that period that's really tricky between residential and real life.
Holly knows exactly what that transition process is like. She lived it in the early parts of her own recovery journey, one she began about 10 years ago.
I noticed I got to a point in my life where I was partying too much and wasn't really achieving the things that I had imagined for myself.
Holly asked herself that same question many in recovery ponder. Why can't I stop?
Well, I had several points where I was like, okay, I should probably scale this back, or this is becoming a problem. But I would then quickly rationalize and justify why it was okay and that it wasn't time yet.
She says she soon realized everything she wasn't achieving in life was tied to alcohol.
That day, I said, no more drinking.
She checked herself into rehab and started doing the work.
What I realized was that by giving myself to recovery, I was able to get so much more than I had expected. I didn't even know how good it could get. When I committed to this process, that's when I said, I've got to help other people.
Holly began working as a driver at the same recovery center where she got sober. Then she became a recovery coach.
Shortly after that, I was promoted to being the program manager of kind of the middle level of care to help people launch into life after treatment.
Giving her the idea for Denver Women's Recovery.
We focus on helping women do recovery in real life. We are gender specific and we have a special focus in trauma work. We're very focused on supporting our clients in what they need to do outside of the room, since we are dealing with all the real life stressors. So making sure they're getting to their doctor's appointments, making sure they're getting jobs if they need to get a job, or getting into school.
Every woman has a different story and is on a different path.
It's really important to me that women know you don't have to hit rock bottom to get help. Recovery is about taking away the things that are keeping you from what it is that you really want out of your life. And that's what we focus on here, is what do you want and how can we help you get there?
Holly is using her own experience of the struggle to get better and sharing it with other addicts in hopes they find their own recovery path and pay it forward too.
All the time I have these moments of, this is incredible what we've built as a team here, and I'm so grateful for my recovery too, because I don't think I would have had the tools to put something like this together without my program.
Relationships cultivated in early recovery play a large role in an addict's sobriety. One of my strongest bonds is with my friend Lindsey. When I entered a 12-step program, I was told to look for people who have what I hope to have in my life one day. In Rick, I saw a man who was liked, loved, and most importantly, respected. I saw a man who owned a home and had a family. And as we became friends, I learned all the things he has come with time. Time in recovery and time doing the work.
My sobriety date is March 30th, 1993. A little over 28 years sober.
28 years is a long time. People can accomplish a lot. For Rick Lindsey, the achievements made over nearly 3 decades mean so much more because he did it clean and sober.
I have a life that's really a good life now, and I don't think I would have ended up there had I continued drinking and using.
The beginnings of his addiction go back to his teenage years, and he has the pictures to remind him.
I remember what I did on my 16th birthday was I got my driver's license, and then I went and picked up my friends, and we got high and drunk for the rest of the day. In my head, that didn't seem abnormal. Today it seems horrifying that a 16-year-old on a very important day would need to get that intoxicated.
His addiction worsened in his 20s.
Sometime in the late 80s, I was alone and I was desperate, and I didn't piece together that alcohol and drugs were exacerbating that feeling of aloneness. And because of that, I just kept drinking and using.
Rick's recovery process came in layers.
I finally was able to quit drinking in 1989, but it took me a while, to be honest, that drugs were also part of what was bringing me down.
It was people on their own recovery journey who helped Rick embrace his path to sobriety.
And they helped me realize that without recovery, the rest of my life is really kind of meaningless.
Readjusting his mind to see what was meaningful.
I had to learn how to just enjoy a beautiful day. That was kind of a challenge in those early days because my body just was craving that experience, and it didn't matter that my brain was telling me this is making me better, but my brain was also craving to be high and to be drunk.
But sobriety doesn't equal perfection.
I've wrecked cars in sobriety. I've had to file bankruptcy in sobriety. I've had ups and downs with business in sobriety. I've lost relationships in sobriety. And I've gained all of that. The thing is now that I have to remember that on a bad day, that using drugs and alcohol is not going to make that day anything but worse.
Are you able to see the old pictures active in your addiction, and then see when you were sober and see that there was a difference in either serenity or happiness in your life?
I can't really see that because there's so much of the worst part of my addictions that aren't captured anywhere in my life. They were just they're just clouds.
Clouds that have now faded thanks to brighter days, full of activity he didn't have before.
I smoked 3 packs of cigarettes a day and a bag of dope every couple days, and it gets hard to have any sort of physical stamina when you're doing that.
Now Rick runs marathons and is more active than he says he could have ever imagined.
I had never skied before I got sober. I was able to get out and start hiking and skiing and biking, and my friends, my network of friends, have also been those people who like to ski and bike and replace what was that basement me that was just locked in and couldn't help my friends for 30 minutes. Now I have these friends that would travel across the planet to help me out if I was finding myself in a deep need.
Sinan Rodriguez, better known on the radio as Slim, has been in recovery for 5 years. We first shared his story back in November of 2017, about a year after he got sober. I recently went back to his radio station to check in with him and see how his recovery is going.
Recovery has been the best thing that could happen in my life. Honestly, to be really honest, I wouldn't be in front of you right now if I hadn't quit, because I was on that path to killing myself. when you guys last came to speak with me, I was just a member of the staff here, you know, and now I'm the program director, and I would have never made it to that point if I hadn't changed my life and gotten sober.
Even after you stop using in the way that you were using before, like there's so much that you learn throughout the recovery process.
It's a tough thing because I've still seen people lose their lives, and I guess that's what bothers me the most when I talk about my recovery is just because I'm in a better place doesn't mean that everybody else is. I really wish that more people can take this journey and not wait their whole lives. If you're suffering now, not wait so long to get there.
Both of us are very passionate about, you know, telling the story and you know, helping others because it's so important.
I'm still in recovery. I'm always in recovery. And being an alcoholic was just one of the problems. There's underlying issues. There's depression. There's loneliness. There's things that I'm suffering from regularly. And I'm working on those and battling those things and figuring out what it is that I'm missing that's making me sad and depressed and lonely. So am I 110%? Am I flying high? No, I'm still working on myself. I'm still working on myself, but now I can do it clear-minded, clear-headed, and I can see that I'm not broken. I can be fixed.
Well, your story has touched so many people, and it's going to continue to do the same. So thank you so much for letting me pop into the studio real quick. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Eddie, and congratulations on your recovery too.
Thank you.
When I can experience life, I don't need to run from it. I don't need to use. I don't need to drink.
Recovery for Dylan Hurwitz hasn't been the easiest journey, but today his physical and mental health is thriving. His story, when taking control, continues.
Addiction is not gender specific. It doesn't target a race or an age. In sobriety, I have met people from all walks of life. Among them is Dylan Hurwitz. When we met, we connected instantly over the similarities in our own recovery journeys and our love for cycling. I soon found out that Dylan has that connection with just about anyone. He speaks with purpose. That, he says, is what recovery gave him.
All we have to do is make the magic. That's what we do.
Whether chatting with coworkers,
Good morning. Welcome to SoulCycle.
or meditating,
I have this prayer ritual that I do before classes.
Dylan Hurwitz does everything with intention, something he picked up in early recovery, and it stuck with him for more than 6 years.
Sobriety date is March 20th of 2015.
To know Dylan's story is to know his past. He was just a boy when he began experimenting with substances.
I was kind of a wild kid. I got in trouble, and around 13, 14, I started drinking and doing other things, using drugs a little bit.
Dylan says he committed to his drug use, and the habit got progressively worse over a span of roughly 10 years. But he says there were times he wanted to stop.
I found that I really couldn't, and I genuinely would want to. And every single night, I would make a decision to myself that it was over, that tomorrow was day one. And I would wake up every morning and I would renegotiate on that deal.
The teeter-totter of user to sobriety became a routine.
I insisted that I could do this on my own. So I said, I need 2 weeks to try to stop. And I think I maybe went 2-3 days without using heroin, and then used again.
Dylan's relationship with his parents also suffered. His battle with addiction was a struggle for them too.
They kicked me out and they held me accountable, and they had learned when I was in treatment that that's the action step to take in the event that I use again, is that they have to cut me off and detach from me. And they did that. And that was the best thing that ever happened to me.
Homeless, Dylan lived in his car for weeks. Finally, he called someone who had offered him help before and was willing to help him again.
And they checked me back into detox, and that was on March 19th of 2015.
First, sobriety.
And I woke up, and I don't know, for the grace of God, it was kind of it felt like my last chance to really do it.
Then, Dylan focused on his physical health.
I connected with it immediately, especially SoulCycle, the aesthetic just the energy of the space.
He's gonna sink down into the music.
I have to be inspired by the music being played.
Today, he teaches those soul cycle classes.
And right away lift up and out of your seat.
What I was taught was that we don't get sober just to stay in this confine. Like ultimately my sobriety, my spiritual condition, if you will, is defined by how does it manifest in the world, right? How do I communicate with humanity? How do I serve others?
And has accomplished something many in recovery strive for, mending the relationships once thought ruined.
I knew like up here that I loved my family, and I felt it in here, but I didn't act like it. And you know, I have one older sibling, his name's Jordan, and my mother, Candace, and my father, Morris Hurwitz, are still together. They've been together for longer than I can count. Being able to be their son and like to try to be a brother to my brother, and being able to like be present in those relationships.
It's really the beginning of planting those seeds that say, maybe this is possible. Maybe I can do this, and I can have a life.
Dr. Michael Barnes dedicates every day to helping men find purpose on their recovery journey, but the surroundings in Steamboat Springs helps in that too.
A foundry is a factory for casting metal. It takes broken pieces, melts them down, and molds them into something with purpose. A center in Steamboat Springs does the same, not with metal, but with men. Foundry Recovery Center is focused on helping men work through addiction and trauma, molding their broken pieces into renewed purpose.
The scenery of Steamboat Springs is like a storybook. Amidst the green fields and in full view of Mountain Peak sits the Foundry Recovery and Treatment Center.
We're primarily a substance use disorder treatment center that is trauma integrated.
Where the men seeking help have far from fairy tale lives.
Most of our clients come with addicted to multiple drugs.
Dr. Michael Barnes is the Foundry's chief clinical officer.
Our goal is sobriety first, recovery first, and we really see that such a high percentage of our clients come with co-occurring disorders, depression, trauma, and that those issues are, if you don't address those, recovery becomes increasingly harder to achieve.
This is not your everyday treatment center. Here, residents meditate and receive counseling in yurts. They heal through connecting with nature. Positives, Dr. Barnes says, that come from the location alone.
The environment plays a huge role.
It's not just the garden. I mean, everything works together to create this, this different kind of recovery process, I would say.
We have, the evidence-based practices that you'll see that are more medical, heavily researched, that are, components of any good treatment. And we, of course, have that as a core of our programming. And then adding in the garden and the equine, all those different, the ability to go hiking or to, learn how to fish on, some free time and so forth. It creates an opportunity to experience happiness and joy and learning new things in recovery and provide context for what it might actually be like to stay clean and continue this path once you leave here.
Tom Walker is the Foundry's chief operating officer. He has his own story of recovery.
When I was first introduced to substances, alcohol at a very young age, I fell in love with it. I compulsively started using more and more substances of different types and found myself in a place that no matter how badly I wanted to stop, I couldn't. The idea of living under those conditions any longer seemed impossible, and I was at that breaking point where it was either get sober or, continue a miserable existence.
Tom went into treatment, got sober, then got the itch to help others.
I found myself at 2 years sober, working in a detox center that was community funded, and working with police diversion, and then became a counselor, and then eventually worked my way into a more administrative role over time.
Now at the Foundry, Tom provides living proof to the men in treatment that addicts can have an accomplished life.
I just came in to stop the pain, and I was given this gift that was more than I ever would have given myself. Just celebrated 24 years.
Though they too must put in the work.
If we can't allow clients to see that they can get what maybe they thought they were getting out of substance use in recovery, that their life can actually be more fulfilled, why would they do this? And so that's a big part of our job, not just acceptance of a chronic, potentially fatal disease, but people with chronic diseases live beautiful lives, and they can too.
Lives that may not be fairy tales, but lives they can be proud of.
I wasn't really ready to admit that it was a problem, but I knew that what I was doing was going to be the end of me.
I couldn't do this special without diving into the personal connection I have with addiction and recovery. I'll share my story when Taking Control continues.
I've always had a problem with drinking. I drank in high school, I drank in college, I drank in early adulthood. It just really never stopped. Rock bottom came before I even quit. I was working in Tulsa, and I went to a party. One of my friends threw a party at her rooftop apartment. I drove home and didn't make it home. I crashed my aunt's car into a tree. I remember coming to when someone said, "I think there's a dead body in the car." I stopped drinking and driving in any possible way. I still went out and drank a lot, and I thought that that was enough. And then one day, one of my friends at the station was leaving the station, and I went to her going away party. I was drunk by the time the party started, and I ended up getting kicked out of that bar. So the next day, two of my friends took me out to what I thought was gonna be drinks, because that was my life, and they had a bit of an intervention. They sat me down and basically told me that the Eddie that they knew was no longer here, that either I was late to events or I didn't show up at all, and if I did show up, I was always drunk. From that moment on, I really listened, and I talked to a therapist, and then I started my recovery journey. If those two women had not sat me down that day, I don't know if I'd be where I am right now. I came to terms a long time ago with that this was probably gonna kill me. Like saying the words out, it's hard because it's basically saying I no longer cared about myself, but I didn't. I cared about the other people who cared about me, and I knew that I was hurting them, and I didn't want to do that anymore. What I do is try to tell my story and to speak about it so that people know that there is a sense of normalcy in this. Like, it's normal for someone to be an alcoholic. It's normal for someone to be an addict. The hard part is asking for help and seeking that help and getting on that recovery journey. But once you get on it, and if you stay on it, you just know that your life could be so much better. We hope that any one of the stories of recovery that you've seen tonight will give you hope that you can get through your addiction, and most importantly, that you are not alone. Text the word recovery to 303-871-1491 to watch any of these stories again, and for a list of resources for you or a loved one who is struggling with addiction. Thank you for joining us for Taking Control Stories of Recovery. For me, one of the greatest gifts of sobriety is getting to live in the present and getting to experience every moment, both good and bad. I hope all of you are able to find something to hold on to, something to guide you on your journey of taking control.